Trump versus the state of Hawaii. The Supreme Court renders a decision. Breaking news from FAIR and our Facebook Live. I'm Dan Stein. I'm joined by our Director of Litigation at the Immigration Reform Law Institute, Chris Hajec. Thanks for joining me. Many of you may remember all the noise and the fuss and fury around President Trump's travel ban, his 3 different versions over the last 18 months. To hear the Supreme Court today, you would think there was no issue. As we have articulated many times, the president enjoys broad latitude under authority delegated from Congress to suspend the admission of aliens for pretty much whatever reasons he may deem to be in the national interest. The decision today was issued by Justice Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, in a fairly short decision, nevertheless reaffirming the president's broad authority. And guess what? You heard it here first. You heard it here first from FAIR. You also heard it from our affiliated law institute, the Immigration Reform Law Institute. Chris, give us the breakdown on what the findings were.
Well, this decision is a huge victory for the American people, and it does several things, all of them good. It restores the true Constitution, which had been distorted by the lower courts, and that distorted version of it had been hyped up in the media. It does so by preserving the president's constitutional power to exclude classes of aliens in the national interest.
So it preserves the president's power to exclude classes, entire classes, if the president deems it in the national interest. All right?
That's right, Dan.
Next.
It upholds the power of the people acting through their elected representatives to exclude aliens as they see fit.
So the courts should not be intruding upon powers that are pretty much delegated to the president by Congress.
Right, and they're delegated to the president by Congress, and they're delegated through elections from the people, the sovereigns in America, to Congress and the president.
Okay. What else?
And crucially, this decision blocks foreign groups from being able to force themselves into the country through lawsuits.
Now, this was crazy. You had Hawaii bringing people in who were saying foreign people who want to come to this country should be allowed to sue for their right to come in, when historically that was not the case, right? The ACLU and other organizations want people outside the country with no real attachments to be able to sue to litigate their right to come in.
Right. They found an end run around that prohibition by having their relatives or co-religionists sue here, right, claiming that their constitutional rights were violated, but the court rejected that approach and held that at most Trump had to provide a rational basis for his exclusion order.
And they said that that's not true. This stands on its face as valid, and courts should in general not interfere with that rationale, right?
Exactly.
And what's the fourth reason, fourth finding?
Well, activists were trying to undermine our national independence and our sovereignty with this case, and they failed.
So this is a real threat to the historic prerogatives of the executive to manage our borders and control our borders.
Exactly, and it's a threat, in their eyes, they meant it to be a threat to national sovereignty of any country.
So this is a big victory for President Trump and the American people?
And it's a big victory for nationalism.
Big victory for nationalism. And can you find the opinion on your website at Early?
Yes, very shortly.
Okay, irli.org, irli.org. I'm sure you can also find it at some point soon on the FAIR site as well, fairus.org. This is a very important case, many months in the making. We want to congratulate all the parties that were involved, and of course Early filed an amicus brief, or I assume many amicus briefs in that case.
Yes, we covered all the ground. We concentrated mostly on the Establishment Clause part.
Yep, state of Hawaii really took a smackdown, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Didn't you think the state of Hawaii was out of line?
I thought it was a politically motivated lawsuit on their part.
And yet the media never covered it in an even-handed way and rarely covered the historic priorities, precedents that govern this case.
No, they rarely did. They presented the distorted view of the Constitution presented by or advocated for by the plaintiffs, and gave a false picture of what the issue really was.
Now, there were 4 justices who disagreed. You know who those were?
The 4 who had been appointed by Democrats.
So really, the question of the future of our sovereignty and the ability to control borders depends on who gets to appoint future justices.
It does. For example, just to take another unrelated example, FAIR is not really concerned with as part of its mission, the right to bear arms being a personal, the personal right to bear arms under the Second Amendment exists in this country because of one vote. And this case shows that our national sovereignty, the ability to exclude aliens as we see fit, still exists by one vote.
So you see, a case like this, 5-4, tells you how closely the thread hangs on our future freedoms and the constitutional framework on which we live. Great victory for the American people. Great victory for the Trump administration. Congratulations to President Trump. Congratulations to all who fought for the prerogatives and traditions of our Constitution that gives broad authority to the President to protect the American people and our borders. This is Dan Stein with Chris Hajec, Director of Litigation at the Immigration Reform Law Institute. We'll have more later. Thanks for joining us on this breaking news.